Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Everything is better on a boat, and your vacation is no exception. This year, experience the world's most beautiful destinations aboard your own private yacht charter with the Moorings. Our fleet of modern, custom-designed yachts is just one reason we were recently voted Best Caribbean Yacht Charter Company by readers of Caribbean Journal. So when you next explore the Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, or elsewhere, don't accept anything less than the Moorings. Your vacation time is precious, so make the most of your freedom on the water. Book your perfect charter at moorings.com. Nothing less than the Moorings.
Coming up on episode 296 of Wheel Bearings, we drive new SUVs from Mazda, BMW, and Maserati, as well as the BMW i4 M50. We've got a sort of semi-revival of Saab in the form of the NEVs Emily GT for sale. Toyota is the top brand traded in when people buy EVs. Are women more skeptical of buying EVs? The Hyundai Ioniq 5 that is not essential, and the end of the Chevy Bolt. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 296 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Abul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakeland from TrueCar this week.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from Ars Technica.
Outstanding. Well, Mr. Baldwin, you want to go first?
I will go first. So I recently drove the BMW XM. Typically what happens is you have these vehicles, they come out, and before we are allowed to have for a week to do a proper review, we do a thing called first drive, where we show up somewhere, they let us drive it for a day, maybe two, and then we write like our first impressions of the vehicle. It's good, and it's kind of a nice way to get to know the vehicle before it hits the market. So when people are sort of early adopters can figure out whether or not they want to buy this car. So what happened was the BMW XM had a first drive opportunity. I couldn't make it. I don't remember why. But what I could do.
Well, it was the month of March when 63,000 different vehicles were all being launched at the same time.
Exactly.
That's
yeah. So it might have been
estimate.
that. Yeah. So I think it might have been that. So I couldn't make it to the event, but what I could do was fly to Arizona and pick up the vehicle from Phoenix and drive it all the way back to San Francisco. It's called a drive away for obvious reasons, because I drove away. And so I ended up doing this sort of long drive from Phoenix to San Francisco, which is 757 miles. So it's not, it's a lot. And it's also a good reminder that when people are like, well, I need a car 400 miles in case I road trip. I don't think you do, because 400 miles is a really long time behind the wheel. So I initially had planned to drive this thing over one day. But I was really tired, and at one point I slept in the back of the car. I pulled over to a rest stop.
I was going to say, where did you pull over to take a nap? Because it's always my nervousness when I would take a long drive. Like, where should I randomly pull over and just pass out in the car for half an hour?
See, but it's different for me versus like you. Yes. Because I'm a big, tall dude, and you're not a big, tall dude.
I am, in fact, not a big, tall dude. Correct.
Yeah. No one. People typically do not hassle me, do not bother me during my nap time. So what's interesting about the XM is that it's an M car. It's a plug-in hybrid. It is essentially a competitor to the Lamborghini Urus. If you look at this thing, it's all sharp edges. It's very look at me. It's an Instagram car. It's a go to the club and people see you when you get out of it. The ceiling inside the vehicle has like these polygon shapes that sort of stick down, so it has this very textured ceiling, and then it has these lights along the edge, these ambient lights, and so it sort of lights it up, and everything about this car is sort of like being seen. It's like the equivalent of I think I talked to it a little bit about how it's the equivalent of it's the Vanderbilt house on Fifth Avenue, which is a really weird callback, but it's very much like the Gilded Age of cars right now. So you have these vehicles that are essentially built for the sake and because of technology, because we can make these vehicles now because of manufacturing and all tech that's available. You can build these sort of like look at me vehicles that are also actually quite nice. This vehicle, it's a two-row SUV. It is an M car, but it's also really comfortable. If you've ever done a long road trip in any sort of performance vehicle, it's not the best idea, especially as you get older. It's definitely going cross country.
Are you implying that their ride quality is sometimes less than ideal?
It is less than ideal because you have this really, you have this tight ride quality, which is awesome for I'm driving fast, I'm going through the mountains, and then not so awesome for I'm sitting on the freeway for 4.5 hours at a pop, and oh my god, my back is killing.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I drove cross country once in the 240Z with my dad.
Ooh.
In the summer without air conditioning.
Lord.
With a broken arm. Manual transmission, rack and pinion steering. My left arm was broken, which was fine until I got in the parking lot. So I couldn't turn up. Anyway, so
that was a lot.
Yeah, it was a thing. So I drove $160,000 for the BMW XM. It is real. It's sort of. It's almost kind of the best of both worlds. You can do those road trips. So if you're, this is definitely an LA person car. You're gonna, and LA people love going to Vegas. They love getting their dudes and going to Vegas, and they love, that, you go on that drive, and the drive is kind of horrible because everyone loves going to Vegas from LA. But when you get there, you still want to be seen, and when you're leaving, you still want to be seen. And this is the car to do that in because it's going to be comfortable on the road to Vegas. And it's also going to be, if you want to do any sort of cool driving in the mountains around Vegas, you can do that. Or if you just want to be seen with everyone in the vehicle comfortable, you can do that as well. So it's not.
And just in case anybody forgets you're driving a BMW, especially at night, it's got that little light pipe around the perimeter of the twin kidneys.
Yeah. And the twin kidneys are actually smaller than you would anticipate. They're much smaller than you see on the iX. They're actually in proportion to the vehicle, which is nice. I think we've seen
concept.
Yeah, I think we've seen BMW just go like, we're going to make these kidneys as big as possible. And it's a car that on it, if I just sort of look at it, I'm like, oh, this isn't something that it's not me. It's not my personality. I just want to, I want a small, fast, doesn't have to be crazy. I just like my little BRZ. Mm-hmm. If it disappeared into the background, I don't care. A WRX, I don't care if it looks weird. I like those cars. Mazda Miata, it's a great little car. If for me, if I don't put the top up, or if I don't put the top down, or up. So it's actually a really nice car. It had heated and ventilated seats. The Urus starts at $235,000, which is far more expensive than this vehicle. I think that design is a bit it's polarizing.
That's one way to put it.
I feel like the nicest way to say not everyone's gonna like this.
Not everyone's, but the people who are gonna like it are going to like it. And I think that's what it comes down. And you can nap in the back. I think you got little pillows, little XM pillows. And so I'm at a rest stop in Arizona. It's, I don't know, 1 billion degrees outside. I need to be concerned about poisonous snakes and insects and scorpions. Also, the sign in Arizona says poisonous snakes and insects inhabit the area, and there's a picture of a scorpion and a snake. Scorpions are not insects, okay? They're let's just
to clarify.
Just to clarify. They are not technically insects.
So what is a scorpion if it's not an insect?
It's like a spider.
Oh, okay.
It's where they're like
Spider's not an arachnid?
Yeah, it's an arachnid family.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
It has 8 legs, not 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. That's not an insect.
It is. I just was Googling, like, I'm not believing you. It is. Scorpions are animals in the order Scorpiones under the class Arachnida, which makes them a distant cousin of spiders. Yeah. So you were perfectly accurate. Good job. Okay, continue.
It was for Ars Technica, so I have to be, they're a nerdy site. They do a lot of science stuff, and I cannot, you can't phone that in. You can't just let something like that lie. You gotta tell the audience, hey, if you live in Arizona, you need to talk to somebody. It has 30 miles of range, EV only range, which of course immediately burned through that while I was driving. But as you're driving, it'll give you a mile or two of charge onto the battery. That way, when you slam the accelerator down, you get that EV bump before the motor catches up. Overall, no, I really. I know I really like this car especially for what it is. If your husband or your wife or your partner buys one of these and you're just rolling your eyes at them, but you're like, fine, you're gonna enjoy the car. You're gonna be like, oh, I can't believe they bought this giant look at me car. But when you get behind the wheel or you're a passenger, you're gonna have a nice time. It's comfortable when it needs to be. It's sporty when it needs to be. There's plenty of room for human-sized adults. And it's got a trunk. You can store your stuff in the back, and you can sleep in it.
Yeah,
and you can take a nap.
And you can totally take a nap.
And this is only the second ever exclusive M car. So there's no standard BMW variant of this. The original M1 was the first, and then now this one. So it's only an M product.
It's all you get is performance.
Kind of like the polar opposite of what the original M1 was.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yes, it's an M for this time because people love their SUVs and they want to be able to take their friends or pretend like they're going to take their friends or pretend like they have friends. I don't have any friends.
Like, how often do you really bring all those? Like, I remember having SUVs when the girls were little because you need to take everyone, like air quotes, everyone. It was on rare occasion do we actually put us all into one vehicle because we're always even when you're out with everybody, you're going a different direction afterwards. You want to go to the thing together, but then you're going this way and I'm going that way. And you don't want to stay together. So you need 2 cars anyway.
The irony is that you need sort of an SUV or a large car, mostly when you're young, because you're the only one with the car or you're the only one with a good car.
Yes.
That's one of the things. We would go, me and my friends.
But of course, when you're in that situation, you can't afford $160,000.
Can't afford a decent car.
Yeah. So we had my little Honda Civic, the sedan, the hatchback. So it had 2 doors. It didn't have 4. And the three of us, me and my 2 friends, and possibly another person, would just drive for hours every night. We drive to LA. We drive to the beach. We're from Tehachapi, so it's it's a hike. It's 3 hours each. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours to LA. It's 3 hours to the beach, and we would hop in that little car and drive there because they had Mustangs. And one of them had a 68 or 69 Mustang. The other one had a 67 Mustang, and they look cool, but they were not. We jumped in the Honda Civic to do all those drives. And now the only time anyone is in my car is when if I pick somebody up from the BART station to go to band practice. And even then,
I'll room for your stuff for band practice. Don't you have a lot of stuff?
Well, no, we have a practice space that we rent, so we can just lock all of our stuff in a secure building.
But even if you needed room to haul your gear, do you want this or do you want a Ford Transit Connect?
Oh, you want the Ford Transit Connect?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you gotta have the Ford Transit Connect. But if I'm the singer and I play some guitar, I can put all my stuff in the BRC. I don't play drums.
It's only if you're a drummer. Is that all you need to worry about?
Yeah, if you're a drummer, then you're or a bass player, you have a big bass cabinet. But if you're lucky, you can get the other bands. If you're playing a show, you get the other bands to the back line, which they bring the bass. So you try not to be the headliner. You're like, oh, we'll open, and then you don't have to bring as much gear. So yeah, anyway, yeah, BMW XM drove it. I'm sorry, 775 miles. Whew. Over 2 days because that was during the California rains, and one of the roads kind of washed out. I had stopped to visit my some family, and I got an alert on my phone that, oh, hey, the route you're going, there's something's happening. And then I looked it up, and I'm like, I'm just gonna stay the night here. So I just got up the next morning and drove home, and it worked out fine. But yeah, 775 miles is a long way. Every time you think about someone who's like, we got to have 400 miles because in case they go on a road trip, I'm like, unless you road trip all the time,
and most people do not.
Yeah, most people do not. And the people who keep doing it, more power to you. I love a good road trip, but most people are just kind of cruising around town.
I mean, even someplace like here in Michigan, a lot of people, have, a cabin or a cottage or something, up in northern Michigan. And, they'll go up there on weekends, in the wintertime, they'll go up and, go skiing or snowshoeing or ice fishing. And summertime, they take their jet skis and whatever. But still, if you're in the lower peninsula, which is most of the people in Michigan, you're looking 3, maybe 4 hours. It's like 250 miles tops. It's not 700, 800 miles.
That's nothing.
Unless you're going up to the upper peninsula, then it's a whole different story.
Man, that's not very far.
But those people aren't doing it every weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a now and then thing.
Yeah.
Now and then.
Now and then. On occasion.
Yeah.
On occasion.
All right. Okay. Well, I also had a BMW.
What?
Now I feel left out. I didn't, but go ahead, Sam. That's fine.
Okay. Well, I had the i4 M50.
That's a good car.
I had the i4 eDrive 40 last fall when I needed to take a trip to Chicago. And the M50, is the higher performance version. The eDrive 40 is the rear drive, has the same rear motor as this one, with 335 horsepower, same battery and everything, but it's just a single motor. This one has 2 motors, one in the front, one in the back, for a total of 536 horsepower, 586 pound-feet of torque, 81 kilowatt-hour battery pack. It can supposedly charge at up to 11 kilowatts on AC. Although I tried it here at home with 2 different chargers, 2 different 9.6 kilowatt chargers, which previously with other vehicles have always been able to handle the full 9.6 kilowatts. But I never got it over 9 kilowatts, which is not a big deal. I mean, you can still, do a full charge on it overnight, but, it came up slightly short of what it should have been able to do. I would have expected, like with the Hyundais and Kias on the eGMP platform, they've always gotten the full 9.6, and they're capable of 11, just like this. And when I took this one to the EA station, I was there, it was, there was one other vehicle there, and it wasn't on the same pair of chargers because they're now sharing power 350 kilowatts between 2 chargers. So I made sure to plug into one of the others. So we weren't sharing, or at least we shouldn't have been sharing power. And it only got up to 140 kilowatts, even though it should be it's capable of 190, or I think 190 on the i4. So relatively minor issue, not a huge problem. But overall, driving this thing, love driving this car. It is really a pleasure to drive. Even as an M50, this one, the one I had the optional 20-inch wheels. The standard wheels are 19s. With on the 20s, it was still quite comfortable. I did make sure to be very careful to evade as many potholes as possible, because I did not want to have my 3rd blowout in 6 months. But so I did manage to avoid that. The I like the overall shape of this car. This is the Grand Coupe. It's the same body shell as the 4 Series Grand Coupe, but slightly different fascia. With most of the grille blocked off because it's an EV. So there are a couple of downsides to sharing that platform with the 4 Series. You do get a full transmission tunnel, even though there is no transmission. So you've got this lump in the middle of the back seat. So if you wanted to try to carry a third person in the back seat, they would be straddling the transmission tunnel.
Who has that many friends, to be honest?
That's I know.
Again, we were talking about that. No one has all these friends.
And really, even if you're taking other people, it's probably going to be like another couple. You're probably not going to have 3 people in the back seat. And unless your friends are really slim, you probably don't want 3 people in the back seat.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
They're not going to be comfortable, even if there was no transmission tunnel there. The other downside, is this has kind of the classic BMW proportions, long hood, the cab kind of set back when you look at it in profile, and despite that, there's no front trunk, even though you have this fairly large volume, ahead of the bulkhead. And this is a BMW's design decision. They said no, people don't really need the frunk. So if that's a deal breaker for you,
why do you think? Because there's a few. I want to say Subaru doesn't have a frunk in there. I forgot what the heck it's called. Why no frunk? Like, do you think people really don't want to use a frunk?
So
or do you think
in the case of the Subaru Solterra and the Toyota BZ4X, and this also applies to the Chevy Bolt and a few others that are designed primarily as when they're in 2-wheel drive form, they're front wheel drive. And what they've done in the case of those vehicles is they've stacked all the power electronics, the inverter and everything above the motor in the front. So all that stuff is in the front. So there's actually, not that much room for a frunk there. I mean, you could repackage it and put that stuff somewhere else, but they decided to do that and maximize the rear cargo area. In this case here, that's not really the case. They haven't done that, and if you look in the i4 M50 or the eDrive 40, the rear drive version, you can open up the plastic cover that's under the hood, and there's a lot of space there. I mean, they could easily fit 3, maybe 4 cubic feet of frunk space in there. They say that for the all-wheel drive, they're using up that space, and certainly they're using up some of that space, but it's not all of that space. Most of the electronics and everything are actually packaged in the rear by the rear motor. So, it's a decision that BMW made. It's one less thing they have to deal with. That's fine. I would suggest that potential buyers don't necessarily focus on that. Drive the car, see if you like the car. If you do, I think you can probably live without the frunk. There's quite a bit of rear cargo space.
No, I must have a frunk.
Yeah, and it's a hatchback, sportback design, so there's easy access in the back. There's plenty of room back there for all your stuff, at least all the stuff that you might potentially need for a getaway for 4 people. You can fit back there, and your groceries and everything, all that stuff will easily fit in the back. The one that I had was finished in the optional frozen Portimao blue paint, which is a fantastic color. That's the BMW's frozen colors that's their matte finishes. It's not an inexpensive paint option.
How much does it add?
$3,600.
Would you pay $3,600 for it? Is it that good? If you had $3,600 to blow on paint?
Probably not. I mean, it looks great. I love the way it looks, but if I was spending my money, I probably wouldn't.
$3,000. Where did all that money go to for that paint? Because you can get paint from other people for less.
Well, doing the matte finishes is more complicated.
All right, so it adds a matte finish. So that adds like $200. Yeah,
I mean, you can get the same color, the Portimao blue, in a standard gloss metallic finish. And it's like I think it's like a $400 or $500 option.
It's the matte.
Yeah.
You get a guy out there sanding it.
Yeah.
Buffing it out.
Yeah.
Debuffing it.
Yeah. So this is the matte finish. So it looks great. But it's pricey. So, the one I had had the optional high performance package. So it had, high performance summer tires on there, 20-inch wheels. It also had a bunch of other options. The i4 M50 starts at $65,900, so $66,000. With all the assorted options, it came to a grand total of $82,820. You want to guess on destination charge?
I'll let you go first, Nicole.
$14.95.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
$1.
$1 wins it. It was $995.
Oh, I was way over.
Coming from Germany, it's funny. A lot of these cars that are built overseas, they tend to have lower destination charges for some reason.
Yeah, I always want to do it in my head. I want it to be, but no, you're right. Some of the ones that are here are outrageous, and the ones like you said that's under $1,000.
So if you forego the high performance package with the 20-inch wheels, you'll get a range of about 270 miles, I think. If you get the 20-inch wheels, that drops to 227 miles. Although I was getting closer to about 245. So, it depends on how much of that high performance you use on a constant basis. But, in most normal driving, you're going to get closer to somewhere between 240 and 250 miles with this one. One of the other features on here that in the driver assistance pro package, it doesn't have hands-free driving capability. It does a good job with lane centering, hands-on lane centering. So, it's, kind of like what you would get with the Tesla autopilot. So it's a hands-on, and it does have the driver monitor camera and capacitive sensors in the steering wheel. So if you're just kind of holding the steering wheel lightly, even if you take your hands off the wheel for a bit, when it starts to alert you, all you have to do is just touch the side of the wheel and it'll say, oh, okay, you're good. And it does a really good job of tracking, so they could conceivably upgrade this to a hands-free system if they wanted to. And who knows, they might do that at some point. And part of this package, you also get automatic lane changing on demand. So even though it's not a hands-free system, you tap the turn signal stock in whichever direction you want to go, and the sensors will look to see if it's clear in the adjacent lane. And if it is, it will do the steering and execute the lane change for you. So it actually does quite well with that. Overall, though, if I was spending my money on an i4, having now driven both the eDrive 40 and the M50, I would actually probably go for the eDrive 40, the rear drive version. Because even with 335 horsepower, you still have lots of torque. Yes, this one is quicker, and you will notice the difference. But that's not to say that the rear drive one is slow, not by any stretch of the imagination. And it's surprisingly efficient. You can get over 300 miles on a charge with the eDrive 40, and you're still going to have pretty much just as much fun with that one as you would with this one. So
it's 90% of the fun for less money.
Yeah. You can get that. The eDrive 40 starts at 57,000. So nicely equipped, you can get that, in the mid 60s. So basically almost 20 grand less than this. And you'll have a little more range, and you'll still have plenty of fun. So just something to consider if you like the i4. And I do like this car. I like it a lot. I like the size of it. It's a good size. It's not as massive as something like an i7. There is an i5 coming later this year. But this would be the size I think I would want.
It's a really nice car.
Yeah, it is.
I was really surprised when I went to Germany for the first drive for it. Like they had BMW put up the i3, talked about modular, factory, modular manufacturing, and then nothing for a few years. And you're just like, all right, fine. And then they had the i4 and we went over to Germany to drive it. And you're like, I'm sure it'll be nice. And you're like, oh, this is very good.
So I also had the chance to spend a day with another car because I had to take a quick trip out to Los Angeles to do record a panel on autonomous vehicles for a company. And while I was there, Maserati was nice enough to loan me a Grecale Modena, which is their new.
How is that?
That's their new smaller midsize two-row crossover that launched late last year. The Grecale is based on Stellantis's Giorgio platform, which, for those that recall, is the same platform that underpins the Alfa Romeo Stelvio and Giulia. So it's an excellent platform. The Grecale is about 6 inches longer than the the Stelvio, so it's a little bit bigger. And when you get in it, you will notice some familiar things and some new stuff. Like, for example, the steering wheel. Even though it has the Trident badge in the middle there, it also has the engine stop start button underneath the left hand steering wheel spoke, and then the driver mode switch is underneath the right hand side. So it's in the steering wheel. So that's the same layout that you have on the Stelvio and the Giulia, which works fine once you get used to it. 'Cause, they're the only other cars that I'm aware of that have the engine stop start button on the steering wheel like that. Everything else, it's usually on the console or on the dashboard. And so every time I get in the car I have to remember, oh yeah, it's over here on my left on the steering wheel to start the thing. But that's not a complaint. It's just something that, you'll get accustomed to pretty quickly if you get one of these. Even though, this is based on the same chassis as the Stelvio, it does have a different feel to it. Certainly, Maserati is known for performance, but it's also more luxury. It feels more premium, more luxurious than the Alfa Romeo does. And in turn, it also feels, say, a little bit softer. It's a little, certainly less hardcore than the Stelvio Quadrifoglio. And the Grecale comes in 3 different trim levels: the GT, the Modena, and the Trofeo. The Trofeo has the same twin turbo Nettuno V6 that's in the new Gran Turismo and in the MC20. That's more Quadrifoglio style. That's like up in the 500 horsepower range. The Modena and the GT use the 2-liter turbo that you'll also find in the base versions of the Stelvio and Giulia, and in a whole bunch of other Stellantis products, ranging from Jeep to all kinds of other stuff. Very good engine. It's set up with a 48-volt mild hybrid system as standard. In the GT, it's got 295 horsepower. In the Modena, it's got 325 horsepower. It is a very fun car to drive. Like I said, it does feel a little less hard edged than the Alfa. The Alfa is definitely tuned more for that kind of performance feel. This is more of a, at least in both of these trims. I haven't driven the Trofeo yet, but in these trims, it feels a little softer. The responses are not quite as sharp as an Alfa, but it's still, that's not to say that this thing wallows around. So it has really nice ride quality. I picked it up from a parking garage near LAX and drove it up to Calabasas by way of Malibu, and spent some quality time driving around in the canyons in that area there, and had a really enjoyable time with it. As you push it to its limits, you can certainly feel where its limits are, and this is not in the same vein as an MC20 or even a Gran Turismo. But, if what you're looking for, is kind of a mid-sized luxury 2-row crossover, that, is something different. It's like, BMWs and Mercedes and Audis and, Porsche Macans and everything everywhere you look. And you want something that is a little more distinct, that's not all those brands that everybody else has. This is definitely something worth considering. The Grecale GT starts at $65,000. The Modena starts at $75,000. They didn't have a Monroney for this one, so I went through the configurator and built it up as close as I can approximate to the one that I had, and it came out to a grand total of $87,100. I have no idea what the delivery charge is because they don't say on here. But oh wait, here, let's see. Yeah, no, they don't show the delivery charge on here, so I don't know what that would be. But if you're looking for something premium but slightly different from the rest of the crowd, this is definitely something to take a look at. Certainly I think the engine, the powertrain should be fairly reliable. That shouldn't be an issue with this, as it might have been in the past with some other Maseratis. I can't necessarily say the same thing about the Trofeo with the twin turbo V6 because that's a relatively new engine. But as part of Stellantis now, they've got Maserati's got a lot more resources now than they had in back in the days of the biturbo in the 80s and early 90s when they would regularly have thermal events. The infotainment.
That sounds like such a nice way of saying it.
Regularly have thermal event.
Just a thermal event. Don't worry about it. Just a little thermal event.
It's okay.
The infotainment system in this one will be fairly familiar to anybody who's driven many Stellantis vehicles of the last few years. It's basically Uconnect 5. So it's Android Automotive, but with TomTom Maps and Alexa for voice services. It's got a little bit different skin on it for Maserati. So, it looks a little different than it does, say, in a Jeep or in a Chrysler or a Dodge. But it works fairly well. My only real complaint about the infotainment is there's basically everything. There's dual touch screens. There's a 10-inch lower touch screen for climate controls and seats and things like that, and then the 10-inch or 12-inch upper touch screen for the other stuff, for the infotainment and maps, so even things like the volume control on the center stack is touch controls. There are physical controls on the steering wheel, so you can use that, but I prefer to have some physical controls there on the center stack as well. But overall, it was a great vehicle to drive around for a couple of days.
Cool.
Have I driven a Maserati? For a hot minute, I think about that's it. I would love to drive one for more than that.
Well, hopefully in the not too distant future, I'll be getting my hands on an MC20 and a Gran Turismo as well.
Look at you, like all Maserati all the time. Is that your thing now? You're just going to forget these? Like,
well, I mean, Mercedes doesn't want to loan me cars, so fine, I'll go with Maserati.
You just skipped right by. You're like, fine, I'll just skip right by your Mercedes onto Maserati.
Yeah,
Maserati.
It's got that Italian flair, to the design, and so and the interior and everything. I like it. I had fun with it.
They'll both give me cars. I'm just saying.
Whatever.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Everything is better on a boat, and your vacation is no exception. This year, experience the world's most beautiful destinations aboard your own private yacht charter with the Moorings. Our fleet of modern, custom-designed yachts is just one reason we were recently voted Best Caribbean Yacht Charter Company by readers of Caribbean Journal. So when you next explore the Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, or elsewhere, don't accept anything less than the Moorings. Your vacation time is precious, so make the most of your freedom on the water. Book your perfect charter at moorings.com. Nothing less than the Moorings.
All right, Nicole, what did you drive?
This week I was in a car that I did a first drive of a few weeks back. I was in the Mazda CX-90, which I really like. I like the Mazda CX-90. And what don't I like? Because just you guys, you disagree with me every time because you think it's fine. I think it's not. I still don't like the rotary dial and controller in the middle. I still don't like it. I want there to be a touch screen.
It's weird. I don't know. I wouldn't say I like it.
There is a touchscreen. There is a touch screen that functions when you plug in your phone.
Yes, only if you're using Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So which you kind of want to say is better. You're like, well, it's halfway there, and I guess that's good. But then you get stuck in your impulses. Like, I should be able to touch the screen all the time. You almost get thrown back and forth. Like, oh no, wait. I'm not an Apple CarPlay. I have to use a spinny dial. No, when I am an Apple CarPlay, I can't. No, wait. So I don't know if it actually makes it worse. Like, I like that I can use a touch screen, but now my brain doesn't know what I'm doing. And I did like that in other Mazdas that let you do that, the screen is still really set very far back on the dashboard. So it's awkward to reach the touch screen. This one, it's set closer to the edge. So when you reach it, it's actually not like you're stretching out to reach it. So you can see that the design took into consideration, okay, people are going to use this as a touchscreen for their smartphones. So let's make it actually usable for them as a touchscreen. So I do like I'm thinking of it baby steps. One day one day Mazda will get rid of that rotary dial controller and you will see fireworks and going off from my house and confetti and all sorts of stuff, because I will be so very happy to never see it again for the rest of my life. Yes, they will sound just like that, Robbie. So that's my constant complaint with Mazdas. But otherwise, the CX-90, so this is going to replace the CX-9. It's their new 3-row crossover. And they really pushed, and I said this before, they really pushed the premium feel and look of this. Like, they're not a luxury brand. They're truly not a luxury brand, but they're so darn close, especially in the top trims of their vehicles. You could easily put this by a genuine luxury brand and think, okay, yeah, this can compete, but they're not quite so expensive. So they're like luxury. I think of them now as like luxury light. They aren't quite full on luxury, but dang, are they close. And the pricing sort of reflects that. The cheapest CX-90 you can get, the base price would be $39,595. If you go all the way to the most expensive one you can get, it's $59,950. So, when you're getting up to $60,000, you're no longer in a cheap SUV. It's not outrageous, but it's not cheap. But you get so much in terms of what the interior looks like, the quality of the materials. It is so eye-catching. It absolutely looks beautiful. Although I have one, I don't have an actual Monroney, so I kind of just looking online to sort of figure out what I had and kind of sort of build it. And mine, the interior, it's absolutely the prettiest color, but it's just white Napa leather. White is beautiful, but for the life of me, I do not understand why any human being would put white on the interior of a 3-row vehicle that will have children. I mean, to be honest, as a woman who is married, I don't know why any human being would put white on an interior where they have a husband to go near it. So it's
that's true. We can't be trusted, to be honest.
You cannot be trusted. And all of you guys who are like going to argue, you all know I'm telling the truth. And everyone's like, yes, she is. So the white interior, which really white interiors are so pretty. They are, in fact, mine had a little schmutz on it. There's like some black grease that was on the headliner, which I have not touched. I'm like, guys, there's a little black grease. I'm not even going near that. I'm literally looking and thinking, I don't know how they're going to get that out. I don't know how, and it's like almost making me anxious. Like, how are they ever going to get that out? Everyone's going to get this. That's staying forever. That is like black grease. So the white is a little bit of a tough thing. And on a car that's so pretty, to have anything that's marred, because when you own it, you're going to eat a cheeseburger or something and fumble the ketchup, and there's now red ketchup on your seat or mustard or whatever. So that's challenging, but it does look good. And the ones we drove out when we did the drive in San Francisco, they had one that had it's not technically Alcantara. I think it's a different kind of microfiber that adorns the dashboard and everything. And it's absolutely gorgeous. So interior wise, this thing is beautiful. The ride is super quiet. I had the PHEV. You can get it with either a 3.3 liter turbo. I lost my thing.
It's a twin turbo inline six.
Twin turbo inline six, or you can get it with the plug-in hybrid. And I had the plug-in hybrid. I believe I have the Premium Plus, which is the fanciest of the fancy pants. And it comes with, you can get this. There's a lot of configurations of this, 6, 7, or 8 passenger seating. The one I have is 7 passenger seating. So it's 2 up front, captain seats in the middle, 3 seats in the back. And I do like that. I mean, I don't think Robbie could sit back there. Robbie, you're always could Robbie sit there? What would Jesus do? Could Robbie sit there? So
what would Robbie do? He'd probably stay home.
What would Robbie do? Robbie would be like, no, I'm walking.
I'll drive myself.
I'll find another way home. Bye. So I think it'd be tight for someone your height, but more of an average height person, or if you have kids that are going to be in that third row, you're going to be okay. Second row is very spacious. And with those captain's chairs, it's super comfortable. If you're just doing the 2 people up front and a couple in the back, or a couple of, your kids or teenagers, they're going to think that it's fantastic because it's nice and roomy and it is fun to drive. So with the hybrid powertrain, you are getting 323 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. So it's not a slouch. I mean, this is a pretty big vehicle. It's not tiny, but when you hit the gas, it moves. You don't ever feel like it's holding back. You don't ever feel like it's, you never get that sense of merging into highway traffic and thinking I should have let that truck go first because then I'm going to die. You have plenty of room to merge in front of other cars on the highway. And I feel like you have plenty of power that once you're there, if you want to pass around slower vehicles, do some acceleration, to get around traffic, that is easy to do. It also does it very quietly. I feel like, you want to hear the engine when you're driving a true sporty car, or something that's, whether it's a tiny one or a big one, if it's a sporty car, it's all about performance, you want to hear it. Otherwise, you don't really want to hear it. You got 3 rows of seating. You want it to be relatively quiet for yourself, for the people that you have with you, for your kids to pass out on a road trip. And it is nice and quiet. But it's still, even though being quiet and not having a noisy engine, which is a non-performance-y thing, it still handles like a Mazda. Yes, it's 3 rows. Yes, it's big. It's not Sam's Miata, but it does handle like a Mazda. It's got good handling. It's crisp. It doesn't feel floaty in the corners. We had some twisty turny roads to take when we had it on the drive. I took it out into the farmland that we have here in New Hampshire, where there's all these narrow twisting roads. It was fantastic. It was really, really fun to drive it. So if you're still looking for that kind of Mazda driving feel, that engagement, that kind of driver-centric experience, but you need to have something bigger, you want to have room for up to 8 people, then the CX-90 does it, and it does it in a very premium way.
Which exterior color did you have?
I have white. It's just, it's all white all the time. I know. I was like, yay, Mazda. I'm like, where's my Soul Crystal Red? What do they call it? It's Artisan Red. I guess Artisan Red is the color we
they
drove,
also offer Soul Crystal Red. So you can get.
But for reasons completely unknown to me, I have white. Just white. I mean, they're just white. It's a very lovely white. The interior is also a very lovely white. But what I really want is my Soul Crystal Red metallic. It is my favorite paint of all the paints. It's gorgeous. I like it better than the Artisan Red. The Artisan Red is lovely. The Artisan Red is more of like a
more luxurious.
Yeah, I just want like blammo, bright red.
Just looking through the configurator on the Mazda site, on the interior page for the plug-in hybrid, you get 2 options. You get you can pick white or black Napa leather, and then the other thing that they have listed on there is a pet seat protector for the second row. So yeah, they've got it right there. So you pick that white. You absolutely, if you have a dog, you definitely want to get the pet seat protector.
If you have a dog, if you have kids, if you have a husband.
Yeah. Well, and I think in that case, then what you probably want to do is like, the old school, the plastic coverings on the furniture that,
like you had in the furniture, right? That you could see through it, so you could still see the lovely flowered pattern, but you wouldn't harm the pattern.
Yeah, don't mess with the pattern with your body.
It'll go like crinkle, 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 and stick to your legs.
It's fun because you can slide across it, like you can put like some sweats on and run and jump on the couch. Woo!
Yeah, people didn't have those on the seats of their grandmother's house. Have no idea what they're missing out on.
You're missing out. You're really blowing it.
All right. Anything else on the CX-90?
No, I mean, I like the CX-90. It was fun to have it for a little bit more drive times. You do the first drives and you get a really good taste of it, and they gave us plenty of time behind the wheel, but it's always nice to sort of live with it, drive it to the grocery store, drive it around town, and just kind of experience it the way you would normally drive a car. I like the CX-90. I like the CX-90 enough that I might be able to overlook the infotainment controller that I hate were I in the market for a 3-row SUV.
Well, it still has CarPlay, so you can just plug that in.
Well, that's why, because I could use the CarPlay and Android Auto and avoid that controller at all costs. So
yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Mazda
all right.
CX-90.
Let's talk about some of the stuff that happened this week. So you both remember Saab, right?
Yes, I do remember Saab.
Do you remember what happened around 2009, 2010 with Saab?
There's so many things that have happened with Saab.
I don't know what happened with Saab.
So GM, after the financial meltdown in the fall of 2008, decided they needed to get rid of a bunch of brands because they had like 8 brands at the time. They got rid of Pontiac and Hummer and what else? There was something else, and then there was also Saab, and they said they had bought Saab in the early 90s, and they said, okay, we're going to get rid of Saab, and the initial plan was they were just going to shut it down. They weren't even going to offer it to anybody. But then somebody came along, like Spiker came along and offered to buy it, so Spiker bought it, and that didn't work out so well. They never managed to get any product out the door, and eventually it ended up in the hands of some Chinese owners who renamed the company to NEVs, New Electric Vehicle something, I think, NEVs. And they set about trying to develop EVs based on the existing. They started off with the Saab 9.3, and I think they might have built a few hundred of those that were sold in China, and then they developed a larger one, which was named the Emily GT. Not sure why, but that's what they called it, and it
Wait,
looks.
do you know what I found out? What NEVs actually stands for?
What was it?
Never eat vegetables.
According to this, it stands for National Electric Vehicle of Sweden.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, you're right.
Now I had to Google. I'm like, yeah. So there we go.
Yeah.
Not that I was just like, that's weird. Okay, continue. Sorry.
So they developed this Emily GT that, when you look at it, it has quite a bit of resemblance to the last Saab 9.5. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a decent looking car. And at some point in the last couple of years, NEVs got acquired by Evergrande, which is a huge Chinese real estate development company that had also at one point over the last several years agreed to invest a couple of $2 billion in Faraday Future. That whole plan never really came to fruition.
Yeah, we know how that worked out.
Yeah. But they ended up acquiring the assets of NEVs, and Evergrande, which they had their own issues in terms of money because they had a huge amount of debt. But they ended up with NEVs, and they had agreed to fund the manufacturing of first couple of hundred of these Emily GTs. 20. They ordered 20 of them to be built of the prototypes. This thing had 653 horsepower, 620 mile range. 500 horsepower, 620 mile EV range from 175 kilowatt hour battery. Unfortunately for NEVs, Evergrande basically ran out of money and stopped funding NEVs, and they only got 6 of these built. But there's at least one of them that's available for sale. It's got wheel motors, hub motors, if you're into that sort of thing. It's interesting. What do you guys think of it?
I think it looks really cool. I'm sad that this isn't happening. I didn't know it was there, and I'm just sad that I know it was and isn't making it.
Yeah. It'd be, be nice if somebody acquired the assets and maybe moved forward with this project.
Do you think anybody will, though? Because I mean, does this bring anything to the table that other companies doing the EV thing don't already have?
Yeah.
Probably not.
You know what I mean? Like if there was something like this has X, nobody has X. Well, let's buy it.
The wheel motors are probably the only thing that's really distinctive.
Right?
Yeah.
So
and you've got that on the Lordstown Endurance. And
so there's not a huge
Rivian.
reason. Yeah. So there's not a huge reason to buy this other than, you guys, this looks really cool. Let's save this. And I don't know that that's a realistic business proposition. I mean, it might be. Maybe there's an executive that's like, yes, it is. But
there's 6 prototypes that work that you could probably get your hands on one.
Maybe. How much do you think it would cost?
I don't know. Probably way too much. And you'll never get any spare parts for it. So
nope. So if you break it, if it goes sideways, if your prototype that's not ready for prime time is really not ready for prime time, you're in trouble.
Let's see. Yeah, no indication of how much they were looking for these cars. Might be something interesting for a collector, though.
Oh, I bet a collector would buy it. That's how you're going to see it. It's going to show up in some collectors, like garage or something.
If you collect rare EVs, here you go. Here's the one for you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's stick with EVs. Actually, we got a whole bunch of EV stuff today. Remember the Tesla yoke?
Yes.
Yoke, huh? That seemed like a good idea at some point.
Yeah, well, that didn't work out so well. I mean, the hardcore Tesla fanboys loved it.
They loved it because someone told them to love it.
Did you drive the yoke? Did you guys drive the yoke that the Lexus had?
No, I haven't tried it yet.
Ugh.
Oh, you didn't like it?
It's for F1. Just leave it.
Did you drive it, Robbie? Did you? I forget. Why can't I remember the Lexus that it was on?
I can't. Yeah, no, I didn't drive it. I mean, you can make it work, but why?
I mean,
You
at least
could-
in the
I mean,
case of Lexus, they had a steer-by-wire system.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
you know,
and
it
it was,
lim-
and it was an optional. It's
Yeah.
I should say it's optional. Like and they're betting like a very small number of people will buy into doing the yoke. I think it's just kind of like, hey, we could do this. People may or may not like this. Let's do it. You know, and it drove fine, but there's definitely a learning curve to getting used. Like when you're used to, you put your hands, there's no wheel to slide around. You're like, wait, where do I have to lift my hand and put it back over here? It's a little weird. Not a super fan of the yoke.
You know, in the case of the Tesla yoke, you know, they stuck with the mechanical steering. So, you know, you still have to, you know, turn it over a couple of times, you know, trying to go hand over hand with that was not a good experience, I think.
Can't shuffle steer a yoke.
And so they you know, about 5 or 6 months ago, I think Tesla started offering a proper round steering wheel as an option that you could replace your yoke for about $750. And then they eventually made that standard on the Model S and the Model X. And now the yoke is back, but if you want it, you have to pay an extra $250 for it.
So now
available as an option instead of standard.
I wonder how many people will actually pick that as an option. What is the take rate, as the industry says?
I mean, someone's going to buy it. There's going to be, but I don't know, 10%?
You think 10? What do you think, Sam?
I'm guessing probably more like 3 or 4, maybe 5%.
I mean, they don't sell a lot of S's and X's anyway, so I figure the people who are buying them are going to be like super hardcore Tesla fans.
It is going to be a super hardcore fan who wants their Tesla to look different than everybody else's Tesla.
Yeah.
Like mine has to look specialer than yours.
I got the yoke. And they're like,
I got the yoke. Okay. You don't have the yoke. Oh, I got the yoke.
All right, back out of your parking space. They're like, crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck.
You got to put that little ball on there that spins. Like
there you go. like the old cab drivers used to have.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. CarMax, a big used car seller. You know, before Carvana came along, they released some data, some interesting data recently, among which you know, they had some numbers on the common trade-ins for EVs at their stores. So what do you think was the top brand traded in for an EV at CarMax last year?
Without looking, I'm not looking. I was scrolling down. I won't look because I see there's charts. No, I haven't seen it. I saw the charts and I didn't look at the top EV brand or the top
brand that people traded in to buy an EV from CarMax.
Just regular old car brand.
Toyota.
Yes. 12% of all the people that bought EVs from CarMax traded in a Toyota.
Okay. Do you know why I thought that? Did they say why? I think Toyota, because Toyota has a huge number of hybrids. Yeah. So if you wanted to go in one deeper,
go a little more.
You're a little more. Little something. You're going to trade in your ginormous number of Toyota hybrids out there for an EV.
So the second brand in the list is BMW, though, at 8%, and Ford at also at 8%. No, I mean your theory makes sense.
If I mean there were when we talked a little bit about how the i4 and there was a big gap between the i3 and the i4 and the iX. I wonder if that gap is still, because CarMax sells used cars. Wait, do they sell new cars? They sell everything, don't they?
Yeah.
No, they just sell used.
Mostly used.
Yeah. So there wouldn't be a lot of BMW EVs in the market. In the used market at this point.
Yeah, there wouldn't be, not yet. It's too early for there to be a heck of a lot of them.
Yeah.
As far as vehicle types, what do you think was the top type of vehicle traded in?
SUVs?
Yep.
People
40%.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what do they leave with? Probably just another SUV.
Probably.
Another SUV. An electric SUV.
or a Model 3 or a Model Y.
Model 3, yeah.
Yeah. And then followed by sedans and coupes at 29% and luxury vehicles at 17%, which I thought was interesting. I would have expected that number to be higher, although there's luxury SUVs, so I'm not quite sure how they split that up.
Like, how did they break it? Because there are, is it SUV just any SUV, including luxury SUVs? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the luxury vehicle is a weird category. There's also luxury trucks, there's luxury sports cars, and there's luxury sedans. What just is a luxury vehicle? What gets pulled out all by itself?
And then top states for EV sales. Any guesses?
California.
Yep.
I mean, how could that not be the
We
first
have the most
one?
people. We have the most EV infrastructure. We like cars.
Yeah, the top five were all the western part of the U.S.
Yeah.
California, Washington, Nevada, Oregon, and Arizona.
Which makes perfect sense. I don't think that's a surprise at all.
Okay, so there was also a study from let's see who did this. This was done by Ipsos, which is a polling firm, along with a consulting company called Barrels, which I've never heard of before. And they asked people about their interest in EVs, and they broke it out. They broke out the data between those that are early adopters of EVs, buyers considering an EV, and then car shoppers skeptical of EVs. And what was interesting is in the skeptical group, the highest percentage of people in the skeptical group were females, were women. 61% of those skeptical about EVs were women.
Wow.
Why do you think that is, Nicole?
Oh, speaking on behalf of all women,
as
a lady.
Well, I mean, we speak on behalf of all men. So
wait a minute. So I'm looking at this thing too, and it says car shoppers skeptical about EVs. Most of them, they have a mean age of 57 and they're 61 female. So it's talking about older women.
Yeah.
Like, because if the mean age is 57, right? So you're not getting like 23-year-olds in here.
Right.
So,
yeah. Because if you look at those considering EVs, the average is 45 years old.
45. So that's a pretty big difference. And it also, and that's 47% female. So it is more older women. I would say part of that possibly could be just like, okay, as you skew older on the scale, the older you get, the going wisdom is that gentlemen do not tend to live as long as women. So that's going to mean that older women if older folks are more skeptical, it's going to skew towards women. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the dudes are dead.
Yeah.
To a certain point, like how many, right?
Women have a longer average lifespan.
When you're looking just at longevity, right? Like as a whole, women live a little bit longer than men. So that means if the older population is more skeptical, which I think they are, I think then it's going to skew heavier that older women are going to make that be like, they're the most skeptical bunch of the lot, most of them, because there's more of them than older men. But I don't, but go ahead.
I wonder if some of it has to do with like a gas car, is a pretty reliable beast now. Mm-hmm. Like, the last 20, 25 years, manufacturing has gotten so well. And EVs are new and they're exciting, but if you don't, unless you like really delve into it, you don't know that they're a bit more efficient. The reliability is you're not sure on their reliability. And if you're a lady and your husband, maybe you don't want a car that might break down in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
Whereas a dude will be like, oh, it's an adventure.
And that also actually applies even just to women in general. Think about this, not trying to stereotype, but reality, right? A lot of women are home with their kids, right? Mm-hmm. Women are hauling their kids all around. The last thing I would have ever wanted when I had a car full of kids was to somehow have an issue with either not being able to charge if I took them out to that farm in the middle of nowhere, or not being able to find a charger, or having the charger charge really slow. And now I'm stuck in the car with my kids.
In the back corner of some dark parking lot in the middle of the night.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I can see why, as a whole, women would be more skeptical about saying, yeah, sure, I'll buy into this EV thing. I'm young and I have kids. I don't want to get stuck with them. I'm older and I'm alone. I don't want to get stuck with by myself. There's some solid reasons. Like we were just talking about you, Robbie, like you just pull over and take a nap wherever you want.
Yeah, I can just do whatever I want.
Right. Women are going to pay a little bit more attention to that. Like, I don't want to be stranded here. Robbie can take on all comers. Little 80-year-old lady can't.
Yeah. And then the other interesting tidbit here, or a couple of other interesting bits of data here. Among the early adopters, 64% live in major cities, and the minimum accepted range was 247 miles. For those considering an EV, 49% in cities, and minimum range 244 miles. So both I think pretty reasonable numbers. It's
sort of lines up with what the market has as well.
Right. among those skeptical about EVs, only 11% live in major cities, and 353 miles was the minimum range that they would accept.
So it's folks in the country who are like,
yeah.
there's nowhere to charge, and I have a long way to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Or they don't. Yeah. They just think they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Think, either one of those things.
Yeah. But if you're like in the middle of Idaho, and it's like 40 miles of town and 40 miles back, so that's 80 miles, and you get to charge overnight, and maybe town has a charging station. They have one 7 kilowatt charging station. You're thinking like, well, why would I do this? Yeah. Why would I add that additional stress when I could just buy a Jeep or whatever. I don't know what people drive in Idaho.
Trucks. I feel like I'm going to make all of Idaho drives trucks, and also all that you can grow there are potatoes. Idaho potatoes. That's it. I don't make any stereotypes whatsoever in my life. Idaho trucks, potatoes.
I mean, they've kind of really, that's their jam.
They've gone hard on the whole potato thing.
Yeah, it's not like we're just making this up.
Yeah, it's like they do advertising and it works.
I don't want people in Idaho emailing me. We make more than potatoes. I'm like,
love you, Idaho. I'm kidding. I'm just saying your thing is the potatoes.
I don't know Idaho enough to say I love it. We haven't spent enough time.
It's probably lovely folks in Idaho and really good French fries.
You would hope so.
I would hope.
They have all the extra potatoes to practice.
Right? Right? They have all the extras, right? Like, let's try just frying these with these substandard ones we can't ship to the rest of the world. Practice our French frying.
We can't ship these out.
Okay. Let's move on to another one from Tesla. They released their second impact report, which is kind of, goes into there's a whole lot of stuff in here. We're not going to cover all of this. It's like, I don't know, a couple hundred, 224 pages. So I'm going to talk about that, but there are a couple of interesting data points in here. One, they, in talking about their product impact, talking about making EVs affordable, freedom to travel, maximizing safety, and building the grid of the future. Making EVs affordable. They talk about, they compare the total cost of ownership of a Model 3 standard range to a Toyota Corolla, a base Toyota Corolla. And I'm kind of surprised that they put this particular data point in here, because for over 5 years and 60,000 miles, they claim the Model 3 has a total cost of ownership of 49 cents a mile. The Corolla is only 46 cents a mile. So it's actually cheaper. You're going to spend a little more on gas, and slightly more on maintenance, tires, and repairs, although maybe a little dubious about that one, especially compared to a Toyota. And then insurance, the insurance cost for the Tesla is going to be significantly higher. And then the cost of the vehicle, obviously a lot higher.
Way higher than a Corolla.
But when you add everything up,
Corolla, they're not even in the same.
Are they?
People are cross-shopping Corollas and
were they? Wait, but were they? I'm trying to figure that out too. Why would they pick Corolla? Were they trying to compare it to something that's like is this the strategy here? Let's compare this to an affordable, everybody can get it, average car.
Yeah,
and look at how close ours comes to that. Is that why the Corolla?
Yeah, it says, the sticker price of Model 3 is similar to an equivalent BMW or Audi. The lifetime running costs of EVs are lower than those of ICE vehicles due to lower maintenance costs, cheaper electricity, and higher residual value of used Tesla vehicles. So, yeah, it's exactly that. They wanted to compare it to something very mainstream that, sells hundreds of thousands of units a year, and show how close it is to something like the Corolla. Which is the Corolla is the best-selling nameplate of all time in the auto industry. They sold more Corollas than
really.
Yeah, it surpassed the Model T back in the mid '80s, I think, mid or late '80s.
Wow.
And it's continued to sell in ridiculously large numbers. So it's almost as cheap, they claim, as a Corolla. Yeah.
All right, over 5 years, 60,000 miles. Finally got down to that page. 63 pages in.
Yeah. And then they The other interesting thing here is supercharger uptime. We've complained a lot about reliability of DC fast chargers or public chargers. Tesla is claiming their uptime for superchargers is 99.95%, which is probably,
you know what? I don't have any data to dispute that, to be honest.
I don't either. And you know what? Everything I've ever heard, anybody who owns a Tesla, everybody I know who owns one is like, I've had one in the 5 years I've owned one that didn't work, or like they always, I think anecdotally, do either of us or any of us have anything like, nah, that seems wrong.
Even when I took that BMW to it worked fine.
Right?
Even when I plugged the BMW, it was like, this works. There you go.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that one.
It's I mean, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, definitely on chargers. And then the other one that actually I think is actually a good sign for the industry as a whole for EVs is after 200,000 miles, their average capacity degradation on the batteries is only 12%.
That's pretty,
which is pretty
200,000 miles. That's a long way.
Yeah.
How many people have? I mean, there's a few, but most people, once you hit 120, people are like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual to have cars with 200,000 miles on them. But, I think that the concern is, among a lot of people is that, am I going to have to replace this battery after 6 or 7 years? And how much is that going to cost me? Well, the reality is the battery is probably going to be useful for as long as the rest of the car is actually useful.
And what's interesting is Tesla gives you the entire pack. They don't have like usable versus gross. They give you everything.
Yeah.
If it has 100 kilowatts.
The default mode in there is that it limits it to 90% capacity. So you have to put it into long range mode to actually get, the range that they quote is based on 100% of the battery capacity. But the normal driving mode is only using 90% of the capacity.
Even then, it's still more than the 80.
Yeah.
And they give you the option to just go all in.
Yeah.
Which people just do because they do. And even 90%. And especially if you're supercharging a lot, I mean, 200,000 miles, 12%. And what's funny is that people don't think about the fact that their gas car, as it gets older, the engine gets less efficient.
Yeah.
Right. Like, just a regular old ICE engine, the longer you drive it, whatever you were getting for fuel economy when it's new, you're not going to get that in a year, and you're going to get way less than that in 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
200,000 miles later. I don't know what the Jaguar is giving me right now, but I think every time I get in it like as soon as I turn it on, it just goes
a little more.
Yeah, it just eats 3 gallons every time I just turn it on.
Like you have turned it on. Boom.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
Have you ever killed a houseplant before? Don't worry, you are not alone. But what if I told you you're not destined to be a plant killer? What if I told you you could not only fill your home with gorgeous, luscious, happy, thriving plants, but live a happier life through caring for them? Hey, new plant friend, my name is Maria. I am a former plant killer turned happy plant lady and host of the Growing Joy with Plants podcast, where it is my life's mission to help you grow happy plants and thrive alongside them. Because when you learn to care for plants, you really learn to slow down, connect with nature, and nurture yourself too. Each week, I share expert tips, inspiring conversations, and soulful planty wisdom to help you grow a greener, happier life. So if you're ready to turn your plant struggles into plant joy and get the green thumb you've always dreamed of, search Growing Joy with Plants wherever you listen to podcasts and hit subscribe. That's Growing Joy with Plants podcast. Let's grow some joy together.
All right. Another one here. The Hyundai Ioniq 5, which I think we all agree we really like driving that thing. Last year, Hyundai in Canada offered a version of the Ioniq 5 called a trim level that they called the Ioniq 5 Essential, which they never sold here in the US. And the reason why they offered it was because the tax credit system, the tax incentives for buying an EV in Canada, had this little quirk in there that they had a price cap of $45,000 Canadian. And a couple of years back, Tesla offered a version of the Model 3 that had the battery that they sold for $44,990. And what they did was they software limited the battery to a range of just 93 miles. I mean, who wants a Tesla with 93 miles of range? But what they did was after you bought the car and got your tax credit, then you could pay for an over-the-air software upgrade for several $1,000s that unlocked the rest of the battery. So you had the full range.
It was a trick.
Hyundai took a little bit different approach to this.
It went too far.
Instead of software limiting the battery, they actually physically decontented the system. So Tesla didn't actually decontent the system. They just they limited your access to some stuff like the battery. Hyundai actually took stuff out of the car, like the whole DC fast charging circuit. So this guy in this article bought a Hyundai Ioniq Essential, and then took it to an EV fast charger or to a DC fast charger, and was trying to figure out how to plug it in. He couldn't plug it in, and so he started posting some stuff online in a forum, trying to figure out what he had to do to fast charge it. And it turns out there's no way to do it because Hyundai just didn't install those parts in the car, the whole circuit, the DC fast charging circuit, and the CCS charging connector, where the two big pins are for the DC charging below. There was just a solid piece of plastic there.
It's like a PHEV.
Yeah,
it's like a PHEV.
Yeah, so you had access to was the standard J1772 connector. So you could only do AC charging on this. They apparently didn't sell very many of these. I think it was like
30?
They only sold 30 of them.
Yeah, they only sold 30, so they didn't sell very many.
Yeah. So fortunately, there's your risk of getting one of these is pretty small. But if you are in Canada and you're buying an Ioniq 5,
oh my gosh, that would be terrible.
Make sure you check for that. Do not get the Ioniq 5 Essential.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That would be somewhat disappointing if you managed to do that.
Especially because this car is capable of charging so quickly. That's the one thing you don't want to leave off the car.
Does it have the same range?
Yeah.
I think it just can't charge fast.
Yeah, I think it's the standard range version, so it's like 240 miles or something like that.
Wow.
So it's the smaller battery, I think.
I mean, if you could get one for like 20,000, I'd probably do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you get.
Well, can you fast charge it? No, but I can drive the hell out of it. But I have to go home.
Right by my house.
354 kilometers, so about 240 miles of range. But you just can't. There's just no fast charging available.
You just got to charge at home every night.
Yeah.
Hella slow.
So, all right.
Wow.
And then last one, the end of the Chevy Bolt.
I'm so confused. Why?
Oh, okay, so here's what I think. I talked a little bit to Sam. I think what happened is they had the Bolt. They were already planning on getting rid of it this year. It was sort of rumblings that it was going away, but then they had the battery issues. And after the battery issues, I'm sure they were like, "Oh, we definitely have to get rid of it because no one's going to buy this car.
Everyone's afraid of it now.
Yeah, it's going to catch on fire. No one's going to buy this car anymore. That's the end of it. Let's just run it out and be done with it. Let's put some discounts on it, and maybe we'll sell a few units." And then it turned out to sell really well. Like everyone's like, "Oh, you fixed the battery? Cool. I would totally want one." And you're like, "What?
You offer a 260 mile range EV for $26,000." Suddenly people actually want it.
Yeah. Everyone's like, woohoo.
And so I think they're like, uh-oh. But we already have, we've already set aside the production for all these other vehicles. And the fact that they kept touting the Silverado, well, we're making the Silverado. I'm like, don't, come on. Because the people who are buying a Bolt aren't buying a Silverado. They want an inexpensive, small EV to drive around, saying, "Hey, we're getting rid of this, but we're going to build a giant truck with a huge battery that you can't afford."
Yeah, right.
Well,
this big expensive thing.
to be fair, they are launching the Equinox EV. This fall.
But it's it's a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, they kept talking about that press release, Silverado.
Yeah, well, because that's what they're going to build at that plant. They're starting Silverado production in Detroit sometime in the next couple of months, and then they're going to add production at the Orion plant north of Detroit for Silverado and Sierra. I'm sure that while GM likes the being able to sell a whole bunch of EVs, the reality is they're probably losing several $1,000s, many thousands of dollars on every one of these that they sell for $27,000. Because even when it was $34,000 or $37,000, they weren't making money on this thing. Of course, they were only selling $25,000 a year, and then they went and sold 20,000 in the first quarter this year. Because of the low price.
The economies of scale, Sam.
Yeah.
Because they'll sell 100,000. If it keeps up, they'll sell 100,000 units this year.
Yeah.
On the last year of a car that came out forever ago, and they did zero marketing on it. That's the other weird thing, is that when the Bolt came out, they had us drive it 17 times. Like, they made a big deal about how it came out before the Model 3, and the first ones were delivered in Fremont, where the Model 3 is being built.
Well, yeah,
then it was just radio silence for years.
The drive program, that they did, we took off from a hotel in Palo Alto that was like a mile from Tesla headquarters. And drove out to Half Moon Bay and then up to San Francisco. And it was a great car to drive in San Francisco because it's so small. It's a lot easier to maneuver around.
Right.
So no, I wish they could keep it going.
Yeah.
I wish they would keep it going. I wish they, or at least say, hey, we have another car that's mid-20s that's coming, that's on the Ultium platform.
Yeah. I mean, the Equinox is supposed to start at $30,000. That $30,000 version is probably not going to be out until sometime middle of next year.
Yeah. I think they said fall 2024, which means they'll probably get or spring 2024.
I don't know.
Which means summer, which really means summer 2024.
Yeah. So there's that. So if you want a cheap EV with lots of range, go get your Bolt now, because it's a good car.
Yeah, around town you can throw like the Bolt EUV. Both of them are good little cars.
They are good little cars, but
and you can get the $7,500 tax credit on them.
Yeah.
And then in some states you can get another, like in Colorado, I think you can get another 2,500. So you can get these things for under $20,000 net.
So. There was every once for a while you could there were lease deals where you can get it for like $99 a month.
Yeah.
Just like ridiculous lease deals. So I don't know if they're going to,
cheap.
because they're they're selling so many of them now. I doubt we're going to get that lease deal because they don't have to do it. But man, I remember because it was a Costco lease deal. I don't have a Costco card because it's just me and my wife, and we don't need a pallet full of top ramen. But I was like, oh man, I'm like, it's I can't afford not to get a Chevy Bolt for $100 a month.
All right, let's answer a couple of emails. First up, John from West Virginia came in by email at feedback@wheelbearings.media. So you can send stuff there, or you can also send it in the Discord or in Mastodon, and maybe one of these days on Blue Sky. Anyway, John says, thanks for your excellent discussions and insights every week. I have two questions about EV charging as I begin thinking about whether an EV is right for me at this time. Little background. I commute 200 miles round trip, 100 miles each way, 2 to 3 times per week for work. That's very much an outlier there. About 90% of which is highway driving through rolling hills. I borrowed my partner's ID4 this past week to test its range on my commute and found that it uses about 50% battery to drive down to work and 40% to return. Volkswagen's recommended 80% max daily charge that only left me with 20% state of charge by the time I got to work, which is not quite enough to reach the closest fast charger on the way home, about 45 miles from work. If I charge to 90%, though, it's adequate. Here are my two questions. Do all EVs recommend that a typical max charge should stop at 80%, except for occasional road long trips? If so, should I be calculating 80% of the advertised range of EVs as I consider my options? Related, I'm aware that Hyundai Motor Group's cars charge faster than other mass market EVs, but I've also heard that charging stations don't reliably deliver those fast speeds.
No.
Where could you have heard that from? What's your impression of how often EA stations deliver the actual fastest charging speed? And is it really worth considering Hyundai Kia's faster charge time as a plus over other manufacturers if your impression is that the speed is not reliably as fast as Hyundai Kia cars can handle? So first up, the charging beyond 80% charge.
We charge I just said, because we're slow charging it, we charge it at night at home. We charge it 90%. I'm saying whatever.
Yeah. Well,
because I'm not fast charging up to 90%. I'm slow charging.
Well, and I think even so, like if you're fast charging, that 10 to 80% is the sweet spot, so that even if you're plugged into the fast charger, when you hit 80, you can kind of watch wherever it was, no matter what the charge you were getting.
The speed, yeah.
It goes like, woo, so it throttles itself back. So it's not like you're still fast charging from that 80 to 100. So if you want to go a little higher, you can, and you're technically not necessarily fast charging it anymore.
Right. And the reasoning behind the, limit, kind of tapering off after 80% or 85% is because you don't want to overcharge the battery. When you're fast charging, it's really easy to overshoot that 100% mark. And where you start to damage the battery is when you go past that 100% charge. That's where it starts to cause degradation to the battery. So that's why everybody basically caps it, somewhere between 80 and 90%, and then tapers off and drops it off to a slow charge after that. So if you're charging at home, you can safely charge to 100% all the time.
Charge it right up.
Yeah. And as long as you're using a good charger, you can charge it to 100% and you'll probably be fine. You probably won't have any issues. And then, if you're fast charging, then limit it to 80%. So that would be my suggestion there. And then, is it worth going for a Hyundai Motor Group EV for the fast charging? Well, I think our impressions of Electrify America.
So it's like 230 to 240, around there for the charging rate for the Hyundais. And so what's the charge rate for the ID4? Like 70, 80?
No, it's 130.
So 130. So even though I think I've only gotten like 236, like maybe twice with a Hyundai Motor Group car, I'm still hitting like 170, 190, 200 at EA stations with it. So it's not, I'm not getting like the full speed, but I'm going quicker than say what I would have gotten at, if I was lucky and the ID4 was able to charge it at full speed. It's such a weird thing, because if I had an ID4 and it's like, what'd you say it was again?
130.
130, I'd probably get like maybe 90 or 100. I don't know why that's the way. Like, we're only going to give you like 80% of what your car can do. That's
yeah. The other thing to consider is, you're probably going to have this car for a few years. And, we're right at the beginning of the NEVI program, the charging infrastructure build out, it's funded by the federal government. And so over the next several years, there's going to be a lot more fast chargers being installed. So by the time you replace this vehicle, then, at some point in between now and then, there's probably going to be more than that one EA station, 45 miles from your work.
Right. So even with it being like, if you're finding charging stations, and I'm a super big fan of EA and how their charging stations work, but even if they're not working well, sometimes they do. Even if you're not always finding a charging station that gives you that full charge, sometimes you will. And if you're on a road trip, you never know. So I think having that, I would still look for one that has that capability, even if you're not using it all the time. I still think it's great. And like Sam said, it's increasing number of chargers. The technology is getting better. The chargers themselves are getting more robust. All those reasons. It's not like you're selling this tomorrow. You're going to hold on this for a little bit. And the longer you have this, the better that network is going to get. So I would still be tempted to go for the Hyundai Group because of how their vehicles charge.
one other thing to consider, if you is, whether if there's an electrical outlet at your workplace where you might be able to reach, if you can, even if it's just a 120 volt outlet, if you can plug in there, when you get to work in the morning and, charge for 8 hours, so you're going to put some miles back on there.
Maybe like 7 miles an hour added after 8 hours. That's 45 miles.
Yeah.
That's 45 miles.
Yeah.
You're good.
So, that might be enough, so, talk to your boss, see if there's an outlet that's near where you can park.
You don't get 100-foot like cable, like the, don't do that.
Do not get 100-foot extension cord. No. But if you can reach it with the charging cable that comes with the car, or like with a 20-foot proper charging cord, then that's another option for you.
Yeah.
All right.
What we're using right now, I mean, you're still an outlier. If you're driving your regular gas car, I mean, we we got a few years. It's not you don't have to rush. If you already have another car, but if you're like, if you want to be a good person for the earth, then
wow, look at him being. If you want to be a good person for the earth, not being judged at all.
I got 2 gas cars and a Vespa in my driveway, so
All right. Next up from longtime listener Bryn Barenshausen says, "Hey friends, been a little while since I wrote in, but this weekend I finally got around to stopping into my local Hyundai dealership to test drive an Ioniq 5. So I've wanted to for some time, but they never had inventory to do so. Overall, the Ioniq 5 is a great car and would be a really attractive EV for a lot of people, but it is not going to get me to trade in my Model 3. They also had an Ioniq 6 on the lot. It was already sold, so I couldn't drive it or sit in it, but I was able to get a look inside and at the trunk space. 2 things are keeping me from trading my Model 3 for either Ioniq: storage space and technology. Despite the Ioniq 5 being a hatchback, I felt like there was considerably less storage space than in my Model 3. I would argue with that point. I think that if you actually start packing stuff in there, the Model 3's trunk opening is not that huge. And the trunk is not.
I'm Googling as you're reading to see what the cargo room is.
Say what you will about Tesla, I sure have plenty of gripes, but they've really nailed it with the functionality of the Model 3. The large frunk, huge trunk, and spacious deep well in the trunk mean I can pack it full for road trips to visit family without having to lose the back seat. I know that wouldn't be the case with either Ioniq. The Ioniq 6 has an especially small trunk by comparison. He does have a point there. Furthermore, the tech seems good, but it's not Tesla good. I don't know about that. I think the Hyundai.
I think the tech that really the Tesla tech is that charging network, and the fact that the Tesla integrates so well in that network is I want to go from here to here, and it's very quickly and very easily it tells you where you got to stop.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, he is right on that. I'm Googling and just getting some quick things pulling up, and it's saying the Ioniq 6 is 11.2 cubic feet and the Model 3 has 19.8.
I think it was the Ioniq 5.
What about the 5 though? Yeah.
Ioniq 5. Was he doing that? Why did I thought it was Ioniq 5?
Well, he's talking about both.
The
6 trunk is definitely small because you've got that shape, that sloped rear back. Oh. So the Ioniq 6 trunk is small, but the 5 does have quite a bit of cargo space. Let's see. Anyway, again, I'm no Tesla fan.
It says 27.2. There you go.
Okay, so it's pretty close. And I would argue that it's actually probably more usable space. Easier to use than in the Model 3, but that's anyway.
Just curious.
Yeah. I'm no Tesla fanboy, but Tesla and Rivian's tech first approach really speaks to me, and I felt it was just a little lacking in the Hyundai. Still would recommend the Ioniqs to someone who hasn't been ruined by Tesla like I have, or who wants a more conventional car. I'm just hoping the refreshed Model 3 comes with a softer suspension for a smoother ride. If so, they'd likely get a repeat customer out of me. Otherwise, my eyes are on the VW ID7.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah. And the ID7 is quite a bit larger, and it is a hatchback too, which also, again, makes that cargo area a lot more usable than the conventional trunk of either the Model 3 or the Ioniq 6.
I'm just happy he's looking at sedans.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. All right. The last one is from Kevin Gray. Hey, Wheel Bearings crew, I'm looking for a new car, and the 2024 Subaru Crosstrek piqued my interest. The only problem I've always heard, buying the first year of a car is a bad idea. Does this still hold true? Also, if it does if it does this for a 2024 model, does that mean changes wouldn't be made until fall of 2024 or for the 2025 model? Thanks for your help, Kevin.
I mean, that is the going wisdom, right? Like everyone will tell you shouldn't buy the first model year of any vehicle because they test them like crazy. But then once they get in the real world, There's always find weird things. And it'd be like, oh, they didn't test it. You guys, they put like so many miles on these. But when real people drive them, things are found. So
real people break stuff.
Real people break stuff in ways that even engineers don't generally. So, I mean, they try and test them. But I think, I don't know. But I have bought the first model year of cars. So as I say that, I did it.
Yeah, so have
okay. So, I mean, like, and everyone's like, you're crazy. I'm like, I did anyway. And I lived, I survived.
And, I think particularly in the case of something like the Crosstrek, the new Crosstrek is not something that is dramatically different from the current generation Crosstrek.
Mm-hmm.
It still has the same engine, it has the same powertrain. It's mostly the same suspension. It's mostly the same technology. It's in a lot of ways, it's more like a mid-cycle refresh.
If it was like the all new Subaru come up with a new badge name and a new engine name, I might be a little bit like,
Puma.
It might be a little bit, like
if you were thinking of, say, the Subaru Solterra,
I would hold a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's
not that the wheels
different.
were falling off of that or anything.
No, but I would wait.
But yeah, for the Crosstrek, go for it.
I think you're fine.
Yeah. I would buy the Crosstrek. I wouldn't hesitate to buy it if that was the worry. Yeah.
You got the big infotainment screen now.
All right. Finally, before we say goodbye, I have an interview that I did with Lori Wittman from Cox Automotive. She is the president of retail solutions at Cox Automotive. We talked at the New York Auto Show. So as president of retail solutions, she oversees the growth and strategic direction for the powerhouse brands Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, DealerTrack, Dealer.com, Vin Solutions, and Xtime. So all the publications, she's responsible for all that stuff. So Lori and I had a chat about what's kind of what's going on in the retail side of automotive, because Cox does all kinds of stuff with dealers. They have a whole bunch of different businesses. So we talked about some of, where things are going as far as inventories and a bunch of other things. So it's about a 15-minute conversation. And I will put that on here right after we say goodbye, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
So over the past couple of years, it's been really difficult for consumers to buy both new and used vehicles due to the limited inventories. And that's obviously led to a lot higher prices, both in terms of availability of vehicles being biased towards the high end, and then of course dealer markups, which everybody except dealers seems to hate. How is the situation getting any better this year?
Well, what we're seeing is that as interest rates, you've seen the Fed slowly take interest rates up. Well, as that occurs, then it does push some buyers out of market. So what we've seen is that there are some prices declining on used cars specifically relative to that. And I think there was another adjustment this week, maybe even, or maybe yeah. But so I think as that continues to happen, I think we will see prices decline a bit because of that. But I think the other factor is that as I talk to dealers, one of the things I've heard is that new car inventory is starting to come back a bit, which should also help on the new car side. Okay.
With those inventory improvements, is there a danger that we're getting to a point where, obviously we've had, demand far exceeding supply for the last 2.5, 3 years. And I know I've sat in a couple of Cox briefings over the last year or so where they talked about even with some decline in demand, we're probably still going to be above where the supply levels are. So it's probably not going to be an issue. Are you seeing that change at all? Is there a risk that the demand level is going to dip below the supply that's available?
Well, there is a lot of pent-up demand there because of what's happened the last couple of years. But, I do think the buying power of the average person because of interest rates, things that are going on with inflation, are going to push some people to keep their cars longer. So I think we'll see demand wane a little bit with that. Now, as I said, I mean, there's a lot of pent-up demand, so it'll be interesting to see how both sides play out.
Yeah, I think there's obviously been a lot of people who've kept cars longer than they might have otherwise in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And so there's not enough there. What some OEMs have indicated that they'd like to maintain lower inventory levels going forward. They kind of like the way it's been. Not having as many vehicles sitting on dealer lots, less need for incentives. Do you think that is something that's going to be able to be sustained?
Well, it's interesting because there were so many things that we don't want to relive every day after we get through COVID, but that's actually one bright spot that we saw, because it can positively impact almost everybody as part of a transaction. And what I mean by that is, consumers do like being able to purchase exactly what they want, to be able to order the features they want, to pay for only what they need or want. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's not always bad for dealers either, because dealers find but there's greater customer satisfaction as a consumer gets exact.
I mean, you don't have to go and pick from one of 50 different gray or silver cars on the lot.
Then all of a sudden, your satisfaction's a little higher. And quite frankly, then they're not acquiring new physical space to hold their inventory. We also have that they're not paying as much on floor planning, so their profitability improves as well. So I think there's a lot of goodness with the custom orders, and I think we're going to continue to see that continue in the future. I mean, not exclusively, obviously, but I think there's going to be more of that as we continue on. And I think the biggest challenge, and I think dealers are taking it on, is trying to make sure they keep the customer updated. I think a consumer that orders a car and it just waits and doesn't get updates and maybe misses dates, I think that doesn't create a great experience. So I think the dealers that really want to embrace this approach on making sure they're transparent about everything that's going on along the process.
What about approaches like what GM has talked about with having some regional distribution centers where rather than the dealers stocking the inventory, the OEMs could stock that inventory and have a greater variety of vehicles. So dealers could order and get them within a few days.
Yeah. What I really like about that is that people are being creative about how to solve some of the supply and demand imbalances. I think it's potentially a really good thing for consumers, because then if there is the model that is the gray one that you're talking about, that they're
the not gray case,
then it may just speed up delivery and make it easier on the consumer, make the time frame much smaller. Now, I think I haven't spent a lot of time talking to dealers about how this affects their business model, but I mean, a satisfied customer is always a good thing, especially if you're trying to get repeat customers, you're trying to get people in for service. So I got to imagine at some level it's good for dealers.
So obviously right now we're also going, accelerating this change towards electrification, which has a big impact on dealers, in terms of their revenues after sales for service. We've heard some things, some dealers for some OEMs are maybe not crazy about some of the plans they've heard in terms of how much they're going to have to invest, maybe some of the restrictions they're going to have in terms of pricing. What are you hearing through Cox from dealers?
Yeah, in different levels of investment. I feel like every manufacturer has chosen almost a different path to take with their dealers. And I think the ones that are probably going to be the most successful are kind of heading down that path together and having a dialogue, because what I know for talking to dealers, and I talk to a lot of them, and they have a lot of customers across the country, is that they see this as a great opportunity to be part of the conversation. What we know from our research is that consumers, it's a hard purchase, an EV. I could equate it to buying a car all the way online. It's you have to, there's a lot of stuff you want to figure out. And it's not just about range anxiety. There's just a lot of other questions that can.
A lot of technology for them to work.
A lot of technology. And there's also the concern of, like, even if, you have good range hair power, but, what are some of the features? And a dealer can do that. A dealer's always done it. A dealer has been a trusted advisor of a consumer and can help them think through the complicated process. So what I know is that dealers want to be part of it. Now, the cool thing about some of the approaches that are being taken is that it's going to unlock connections with a younger customer base. And the EV customers are usually they're usually younger, they're usually more tech savvy. And so it's going to help dealers be able to successfully attract some different segments they might not have been able to get to easily.
Yeah, with some of the newer players in the market, Rivian, Tesla, Lucid, VinFast, they're not going the traditional franchise dealer route.
Yeah.
And a lot of consumers buying those vehicles say, "Yeah, we like not having to deal with a dealer." Not everybody is crazy about dealing with working with traditional dealers, and obviously dealers are trying to protect their turf by trying to enforce franchise laws, but what are you hearing from dealers about how they might evolve?
Well, and I think we've seen some success with some of those new entrants in the space. And I think that we've also learned a lot from some of the models they've used. And I think that's goodness, right? Because I think we can all evolve as an industry. So, I think there's a lot of goodness that's come out of that. At the same time, I think what dealers have appreciated, and I think even consumers have appreciated, is that it's complicated. That car buying is not just about agreeing to a price and making sure that it's delivered. There are service implications. There's distribution. There's all types of things that have to happen. It's a more than just a one-time event. And I think that's where, what I've heard from dealers is many times a customer has more questions after they go home having a...
Once you finally start to dive into it, then the questions start to surface.
I've heard a few dealers are doing this, what we call second delivery, where they're going and having a conversation, or a person's coming to the dealership. Either way, but they're actually able to get to like the next layer of questions because all of a sudden the person's been driving car, especially with an EV. And so you're going to get that with a franchise dealer, and you may or may not be able to get that with some of the new entrants. And so I think our franchise dealers that are our customers know how many aspects of that process, whether it be service, whether it be distribution, whatever it is, understand how important it is and how complicated it is, and that they're very, very good at it. And so I think there's room for a lot of different people in this industry.
And one last area I want to get into is the used car market, which is obviously a lot larger than the new car market. And most people don't really realize that. There's a lot more used cars than new cars. And right now, the number of used EVs in the market is still fairly limited because most of the EVs that have been built in the last 3 or 4 years. So a lot of them are still with their original owners. But as these vehicles get into the used car market, more people that buy used cars are now going to be considering EVs. What are some of the things that dealers can do? They're selling used EVs can do to help instill some confidence, do the education, but also confidence, for example, in the quality, in the state of the battery, when you buy a used EV.
Yeah, it's funny you asked about that because that's work that we're doing right now, trying to make sure that we are helping. One of the positions that we play in the industry is helping both dealers and consumers, and for that matter, lenders and manufacturers as well, understand the value of vehicles with our Kelley Blue Book product, right? And so what we realize is that we probably have a role to play in making sure that we're doing the same thing for battery health. And so we're investing time and energy on working through that so that we can be prepared to help dealers answer those tough questions and appropriately value vehicles going forward.
One last thing around those batteries. One of the companies, part of Cox, is Spears New Energy Technologies, which, among other things, they do battery recycling, which is going to be increasingly important in the coming years. But there's still the challenge around the business model or the operational model of how batteries go from new vehicle to perhaps second life applications to recyclers. Who gets paid at what stage of that Is that something that Cox is starting to look at, as to how to do that, to capture the value in that battery at its various stages of life and ensure that at the end of life it gets to a recycler for proper repurposing?
Yeah. So I should be honest with you. I don't work in the Spears new technology space. We purchased that business because we believe in EVs and just like everyone else are embracing it for the future. And we're investing in that space. It's very nascent for us. And so
for everybody else.
Yeah. So I think it probably makes sense to get some folks from the team involved. That's not an area that I manage.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Lori. Pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, talk to you too.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.